Good morning, y'all. Thank you for tapping in for some real talk from the heart this morning. Daily devotions through the scriptures. And this morning's real talk is from 1 John chapter 5, verses 18 and 19. And I want to talk to you this morning about living under the influence. Right? We're all living under the influence of someone or something. And man, this passage really spoke to my heart this morning. So let me read this. It says, "We know that whoever is born of God does not sin, but he who has been born of God keeps himself, and the wicked one does not touch him. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one, under the influence of the wicked one." He starts out here, right, to be born of God, right? We know, right? We know, man. We are absolutely certain that whoever is born of God, he says, does not sin. Now, I want to explain that here in a little bit, but the first thing I want to talk about is this point here of being born of God. You see, to be born of God means that you belong to Him. To be born of God means that you are born from God, or literally that you belong to Him. I have children, and they were born to me and my wife, and they belong to us, right? So when you're born again, when you are born of God, you belong to God. Your life no longer belongs to you. As the Apostle Paul told the church in Corinth, he says, "You are not your own," right? You don't belong to you. He says, "For you were bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and spirit, which are the Lord's," which belong to the Lord, he said. And so when you and I belong to the Lord, he says here, we do not sin. Now, obviously, right, if you've been born again and you belong to the Lord, you're like, but wait a minute, I sin from time to time. I do sin. The point here is that they don't practice sin. They don't live in a lifestyle of sin. That's what John's getting at here. To be born of God means that you no longer live a lifestyle or practice, right, a lifestyle of sin. He says here, but he who has been born of God keeps himself, right? So to be born of God, right, to belong to God means that you are keeping yourself or guarding yourself from the influence, listen, of the wicked one. You're not intentionally living, right, under the influence or the sway of the wicked one, as it says here, right? And so I want to ask you this morning, whose influence are you living under? Whose influence are you putting yourself under? Because that's really where it's at, right? You can avoid things, or you can intentionally go into those things, and it's unnecessary temptation. And so whose influence are you putting yourself under? Living in this world that we live in, living among wickedness, it doesn't mean we have to partake in it. Just because you live among wickedness doesn't mean that you have to partake in it. I was reminded of Lot, it says his soul was vexed, living amongst the wicked culture of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that should explain, right, our reality, that as we desire to live lives that please God and honor God, as we desire to obey God's word and stand on his truth, that our souls too are going to be vexed by the wickedness around us, but we're not going to be intentionally putting ourselves under the influence of it or the sway of it, as it says here. And so when you belong to God, you don't intentionally live under the sway of the wicked one. There's a saying, right? Don't put yourself out there, right? Don't put yourself out there. Again, don't put yourself under needless temptation, because it's not going to go well for you. When you belong to the world, you don't desire to live under the sway of the Holy One. When the world owns your heart, when the world has your heart, there's not a desire to live under the influence of the Holy One. But when you belong to God, man, when your heart truly belongs to God, and you want to live under his influence. You want to live under the holy influence of God. And living under the holy influence of God is going to, of course, lead to living a holy life. And so the reality of it all is, I'll just close with this, you guys. The influence that you and I desire to live under reveals who our heart belongs to. I want to say that again. I want you to get this closing point this morning. The influence that you and I desire to live under whether it's God's influence or the world's influence, the influence of the wicked or the wicked one, the influence that you and I desire to live under reveals who our heart belongs to. Man, it's a reality check that we need to look inside our own selves. And again, I want to encourage you, beloved, listen, do not put yourself under the influence of wickedness. Man, as a child of God, you should not be doing that. Right? If you're being tempted with wickedness, that means you are to put that thing away. Right? As Jesus said, right? If your eye causes you to sin, if your hand causes you to sin, right? It's hyperbole, right? But whatever is causing you to come under the sway of the wicked one, man, cut it off, man. Get rid of it. Lest that temptation continue to be there and compromise be convenient. Hey, the Lord loves you. I love you too. Praying for you. Asking that you please be praying for me as well. Man, hope you have a great Saturday. And listen, if you live in the area, the Lower Yakima Valley, tomorrow morning I will be starting the book of 1 John. And so we have one outdoor service at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. We're out under the canopies in the shade and in the park there at Calvary Chapel, Toppenish, 408 West 6th Avenue. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hope you can be there. If not, you can find us on YouTube and on my personal Facebook page. All right, man. Salute. God bless y'all. Talk to you guys again soon.